Hello, everybody. This is Renault, and today we're going to do another video about drama. Now, I don't do these kind of videos very often. Usually, daily challenges and random comic book reviews. But today, Scott Kurtz actually just got on my nerve, and I figured I would just look into who exactly he is, why he's popping into things that are none of his business, and just being a general asshole. And what I came up with was something quite interesting, and a little bit disturbing, actually. So, for those of you who don't know, this is Scott Kurtz. As you can clearly see, he's a fat, disgusting slob, and really just a booger of a man. And he was really big in the web comic scene, going all the way back to the early 2000s and mid 2000s. By around 2010, just web comics were kind of just dying away. They were on their last legs, and so people like Scott Kurtz, they kind of reached their zenith, and he's kind of just been floating around like a like a piece of shit that you flush down the toilet, but it doesn't go all the way down, and then a little piece floats back up. That's kind of like Scott Kurtz and his public profile. Now, the reason why I'm even bringing him up is because, like I mentioned, he's been acting like a real garbage trash tier person lately. I'm like, what the hell, man? You've been like crawling around in sewers, going to landfills, just generally being away from polite society. And where the hell are you coming from? And why are you all of a sudden making appearances over the past 6 months? For those of you who are unfamiliar, what I'm referring to is about 5 or 6 months ago, he just popped up out of nowhere and started harassing Betty and Mitch Brightweiser, and he was actually making what I interpreted as veiled threats and trying to engage in character assassins and trying to police their associations. You better not hang out with that person. You better not talk to those people. And it's like, you have no contact with the Brightweisers at all. Like, literally none. Like I said, he is over the hill web comic artist, and the Brightweisers are comic artists. Now, you would think that there's overlap there, but there really kind of isn't. And that's because, to be fair, comic people who made physical comics just don't generally associate with web comics people. It's kind of, I don't know what the deal is, but it's kind of like, we don't talk to each other. So he has no contact with them. And then he just starts showing up in Mitch's drawing live streams and starts making veiled threats to them. And I happen to be watching Mitch Brightweiser's stream at the time, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? What the hell is this guy doing? And so I didn't even know who this guy was, because I don't care about webcomics personally, but I know a lot of people did. It gave a lot of people their careers. But he has no business talking to Mitch Brightweiser. And so upon looking into it, it turns out he's actually a close personal friend, or at least he was at the time, of Doug TenNapel. Now, him and Doug TenNapel actually go way back when they made Rat Fist, a web comic in the early 90s. He's a close personal friend of Doug TenNapel. And so during that time, it turns out Doug TenNapel was kind of doing his little whisper network thing and getting some of the people he knew to try and harass the Brightweisers. That would include phony politician and overall social climber and fake Christian Edwin Boyette. That would also include a guy a person who goes by the name of Late Night Comics, who was making veiled threats against. He was actually making overt threats against the Brightweisers. Eventually, it got to the point where Doug TenNapel's close personal friend, I don't know his real name, but Late Night Comics, the FBI had to get involved. And so these are Doug TenNapel's close personal friends, and they're just harassing the Brightweisers. And those are the kind of people that Doug TenNapel associates with. And like I said, the reason why I'm bringing him up is he and Scott Kurtz have this close relationship, and that's who they are. They made this comic Rat Fist together. It was a web comic, and so some other people who worked on it: Ryan Otley, Scott Kurtz, and Michael J. Nelson of Mystery Science Theater 3000 Riff Tracks. And that's along with, of course, Christopher Hastings, a name I'm not familiar with, and Ethan Nicole. Ethan Nicole and Doug TenNapel go way back. But again, Michael J. Nelson actually ties into this as well, because Michael J. Nelson was someone who... and that actually what leads into this main video. Michael J. Nelson and Doug TenNapel and a bunch of these other people here, they would hold a blog, and Doug TenNapel would occasionally be a guest. And eventually, Doug TenNapel was such a fucking asshole that Michael J. Nelson eventually had to denounce him. And so, Doug TenNapel got denounced, which isn't really... I don't feel sorry for him at all. Like I said, Doug TenNapel has no problems engaging in whisper networks to rally literally who's to attack people so that he can try and pretend and keep his hands clean. But anyway, because Doug TenNapel is such an insufferable asshole, Michael J. Nelson eventually had to denounce him, and he will no longer be appearing on the podcast that they were doing together. But then Scott Kurtz, he's also a piece of shit, because those are the types of people that Doug TenNapel attracts, came out of the woodwork to further kick Doug while he was down. Again, I have no sympathy for Doug, because he actually seeks out these trash tier people, and so this is something that he should expect. And that leads me to, that led actually to this, I think, 20-tweet thread of Scott Kurtz denouncing and backstabbing his own friend. I'm going to go ahead and read this anyway, because it's kind of interesting. Let me get my Scott Kurtz voice here. Thread. I met Doug TenNapel for the first time at a comic book professional weekend after the Calgary Expo. We were staying in Banff, and it was an amazing time. All I knew about Doug was that he created Creature Tech, which was a graphic novel I really loved. This is actually a subtle dig against Doug TenNapel, because Doug TenNapel is most famous for his Earthworm Jim video game that he made in the mid-90s. It was a kind of a 30, or actually at the time, 10-year multimedia franchise, video games, television shows. I believe they also made a 3D version, which didn't sell as well, cartoon. So it was actually the media empire. This is actually Scott Kurtz making a subtle dig at Doug TenNapel when he says he knows Doug TenNapel for creating Creature Tech and completely ignoring the Earthworm Jim altogether. And that's also because Doug likes to tell everybody that he made Earthworm Jim. Anyway, moving on. Bug and I hit it off. We talked about a lot of things, including growing up with bodies that did not conform to the norm. He was tall and skinny. I was very tall and heavy. And how that affected us. It was clear Doug was a conservative Christian with some outdated, to me, ideologies, but nothing worse than, say, my dad had at the time. The oddest thing he did was make his mission that weekend to convince me I had to have children. I had told him we had decided against it. Later, Doug asked me to provide voice acting for one of the characters in a video game he was working on. They decided later against using my terrible voice acting, and rightly so. But I was honored, because among the cast was Mike Nelson and John Heder. I mentioned Mike Nelson earlier. When I agreed to do the voice acting for the game, I was made aware of homophobic and transphobic things Doug had said, which didn't surprise me, because the guy I met in Banff was super Christian, and that made total sense to me. I mean, it's shitty, but yeah, duh. So right now, Scott Kurtz is actually acknowledging how much of a two-faced backstabber he is. He's acknowledging that Doug TenNapel had very conservative old-fashioned Christian beliefs, but he didn't hesitate to work with him on projects and hang out with him. Again, Scott Kurtz is trying to dunk on Doug, and again, I don't feel bad about it. But Scott Kurtz is also revealing himself to be a hypocrite and a two-faced piece of garbage. Let's continue. And I talked to Doug about it, and he assured me it was all taken out of context. How he had worked with AIDS patients and refused to use gloves because it dehumanized him, etc. And I bought it all. I believed him. Sure, why not? And I defended him online even. But, and here's the important part, my experience with Doug TeNapel is different from everyone else's because I'm a straight white male. And if you stop for a moment to talk to anyone else who's had even a quick interaction with Doug, who is not a straight white male, oh boy. You don't have to look very hard to learn of Doug's opinions about women, homosexuals, or progressives. You can literally watch any of his YouTube videos at random to learn his thoughts on this. And that's not even getting into his involvement in Comicsgate. Don't even start. So you tell me how a person who spent countless hours smoking cigars, sipping whiskey, eating sardines, and discussing the wisdom of C.K. Chesterton is just now learning from a podcast episode he didn't participate in what Doug TeNapel thinks? I call bullshit. So full stop. What Scott Kurtz is doing is he's just doing a shotgun blast at this point. He's shotgun blasting everyone he's ever associated with. Because like I mentioned earlier, Scott Nelson was hosting a podcast. Doug TeNapel would occasionally be a guest on it. Now, the common thing to always claim is that, oh, we had no idea of this person's full, true beliefs. And Scott Kurtz is kind of shutting that down while also incriminating himself, because he's acknowledging that everybody knows Doug TeNapel's beliefs. You can watch any video, you can have any conversation with him and know them. So he's throwing Doug TeNapel under the bus, and now he's actually throwing Mike Nelson under the bus with this, because he's an idiot and a social climber. But let's continue. Mike Nelson has known for a long time exactly who Doug TeNapel is, and he's had no problem with it at all. And I wasn't joking about C.K. Chesterton. You spelled it incorrectly here, if that's how it's called. Cigar, Whiskey, Manly Things Club. I think this is either Nicole. I think this is Nelson. That's Doug TeNapel with the cigar. I don't know who this or this is. But anyway, yeah. So they sit around. I think this is Snuff. Anyway. Oh, I guess it's G.K. Chesterton. Whatever, C.K., G.K. Dude was an anti-Semite. All of this breaks my heart, because Mike Nelson is a very funny performer. And Doug is an incredibly talented cartoonist. I love their work and don't get any gratification speaking out against either of them, but they need to take responsibility for their words and actions. So there you go. That's Scott Kurtz. This is part 1 of, I think, might turn into either a 2 or possibly even 3-part series. This guy has a long history of being a piece of garbage. And so anyway, that's part 1. I'm going to stop it here before it goes into 15 minutes. Tune in later when I do the other part. It might either be a part 2 or it might be part 2 out of 3. Hit that like button and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.